Okay, thank you.
Pointman, we'll start off with
Well,
you.
I'm Leonard Hebert. I'm called Pointman. I happen to be the ambassador for Deacons of the Night Motorcycle Club. I'm also the lead consultant for LJH Consultants. Lastly but not the least, I'm a United States Marine Corps from 1966 to 1972, and I served in Vietnam from 67 to 68. And I am an advocate for veterans issues. I have built a veterans residence in Astoria, Queens for veterans suffering from PTSD and substance use disorder. And currently I do a lot of veterans work with my LJH consultants. The Deacons of the Night Motorcycle Club is also involved in veterans issues and social justice. And that's about it, Lou. Oh, one thing else, we do have a K9 training center for the Deacons where we train dogs for service dogs for the military.
Very important.
My name is Mark Johnson. Everybody knows me as Recon. I was a reconnaissance Marine in 1st Recon Battalion out of Camp Pendleton, California. I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps. I'm the Commandant right now of the Marine Corps League of Brooklyn, and I'm president of First Front MC.
Guys, I cannot thank you enough for what you've done for our country individually, and beyond individuals, what you've done collectively, and bringing issues out in the open. And you, of course, I know we go back to the Veterans Court with Judge Brennan. We did a show about that a while back and everything. And the runs that you guys sponsor, and try to raise money for veterans, and also their spirits too, which is probably the most important thing. People, always talk about PTSD. There are so many things, I hope that we'll discuss tonight, that affect somebody who's been in combat and coming home from it. Once again, I want to thank Judge Brennan, we'll get into it a little bit later, for starting the Veterans Court and also helping me start the Rolling Thunder, the ride for the 84 here in Staten Island for Vietnam, and then the Wounded Warrior run. And God bless Judge Brennan and all he's done for us. Why don't we start off with any topic that you guys want?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned, you said about me and Mark, what we've done individually. And that's one of the concerns or observations I have about the Department of Veterans Affairs, which their services have significantly increased, but there's a long way to go. You find that veterans are individually battling a complex bureaucracy like the Department of Veterans Affairs, and we just want to take a look at that and see what we can do to enhance that situation. And unfortunately, it's historic. It goes all the way back to the Civil War, veterans being promised certain services after combat, and as soon as the combat is over, these services don't reveal themselves as we thought they would. As I said before, I give them props because they have increased, but we have a long way to go.
Leonard is he's a Vietnam veteran, and
That's Pointman to you, sir.
Pointman over here, excuse me. What we try to do, what me and my guys try to do, is concentrate on the veterans that are coming home now. 2 different generations, 2 different needs, and a lot of veterans that are coming home now are females. Working with Dan Donovan right now, Congressman Dan Donovan, in his office, on starting a veterans group specifically gendered towards the female needs. Now, we've also worked individually and more individually, not with so many groups, with veterans and their needs specifically. So I have veterans that, as you know, like Brian DeBarian, who is still fighting this day, the VA, to get the right fitting legs that he needs. He's a triple amputee and he can't get the legs that he needs, and we've been dealing with this for 9 months already. And you can get a little frustrated, and we try to do the process the way that they tell us to do it, and then when it fails, there's really nowhere to go. So, thanks for, like Dan Donovan and stuff like that. He's been trying to come through and try to fight with us every day.
I think people don't tend to not recognize the female Wounded Warriors. This was the first year that we had a female Wounded Warrior. I say this, I mean last year, from Walter Reed. And she was suffering mostly from PTSD and other things of the nature more than physical things. But it opened my eyes that day to see her get off the bus, where we escorted them up and everything. And the fact that somebody, after all the years we're doing this was our first one.
Well, of course, and the thing is that a lot of them are fighting their battles in private, So when I talk about specific needs, I'm not just talking about things like PTSD. I'm talking about when these young ladies come home and they have kids and they want to utilize their GI Bill. What do they do with the kids while they go to school?
Right.
That's why I've always, as Commandant for the Marine Corps League, I've always felt it's very important for the veterans organizations to try to step up and recognize that. But unfortunately, a lot of veterans organizations have lost their way in the manner of just concentrating on what's going on at their specific unit, instead of addressing the needs, what they were originally supposed to do, which was to help the veterans coming home.
So what are you saying, that the ladies need daycare?
What I'm saying, everything from daycare to better care from OBG and needs at the prenatal care, and care for their kids, like if their kids are covered when they do come home. So all the coverages that they would need to be able to get on their feet and start their lives and their careers.
I agree with that. The Department of Veterans Affairs, if I may, they have a revised mission statement. Current. I like to just read the mission statement, then show how it's like the antithesis of what they're doing. So their new current revised mission statements for the Department of Veterans Affairs states, our goal is to provide excellence in patient care, veterans benefits, and customer satisfaction. We have performed our departments or reformed our departments internally and are striving for high quality, prompt, and seamless service to veterans. Our department's employees continue to offer their dedication and commitment to help veterans get the services they have earned. Our veterans, our nation's veterans, deserve no less. And that's a beautiful mission statement, but they need to adhere to it more, because realistically, thousands of veterans are a little dissatisfied right now with the service they've been offered. And a lot of veterans think of the de facto model of the VA is first create doubt, and then when in doubt, deny. And what I want to focus on is the denial of benefits and the lack of getting the benefits and how long it takes to do so.
I mean, you see countless commercials of people, being fitted, and, for devices and everything, and them conquering it, overcoming it, And that's the exception, in my opinion, what I've found every time I've looked into it, as opposed to how everybody else is treated. They pick one guy out for a commercial, and 50 other guys are still waiting for their legs.
Right. And you look at the things like the Simplify Fund, fantastic organization, and organizations like that, like Wounded Warriors, of course. But why do these organizations need to raise that kind of money when the VA should be taking care of the veteran that got injured in the first place?
You wouldn't need a DEAV. You wouldn't need Wounded Warriors organization. You wouldn't need those organizations if the Department of Veterans Affairs were doing their job.
Exactly.
And the problem is that you have turnovers politically, in different election years, and different people getting the job and having their own agendas.
Right.
That's my opinion.
So the original job never gets done.
The original job never gets done, but the guy moves on.
Right.
And the poor vet's still sitting there waiting at the curb.
Right.
That is one of the central problems. The politicians and our legislators, they don't focus on it as they should. We find ourselves with different levels of government, the veteran combating against different levels of government. So your politicians and legislations, and sometimes our society, we only focus 2 days out of the year on veterans, which is Memorial Day and Veterans Days. And like you say, they change office, and like Recon says, the job doesn't get done.
I don't know. I would agree, and I also disagree. Like a lot of the politicians, like Marty Golden, he'll actually do stuff for the veterans all year round. So not to try to make it a 2-day event.
Well, those are the exceptions.
Those are the exceptions. And what we need is more people, more congressmen, more people at our level that we could go to their offices to be doing more.
Right. I walked into the courthouse, the old criminal courthouse. I think I told you the story. About 5 years ago, and there was an African American master gunnery sergeant, Marine, standing in line in his uniform. Wasn't a young man. And I stopped short, and I turned around, and I put my hand out. And very slowly, he started looking over his shoulder. And I was never more ashamed in my whole life. I had to be the first person, black, white, pink, or yellow, to ever say the words thank you to him. And I never felt more ashamed in my life. And that's, you know, at that point I just dedicated to myself to the fact that this is not going to happen again on my watch. I mean, I close every show by telling people, you see a kid in uniform, walk up and say the magic 2 words, thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that's over with.
I wouldn't be here doing this show.
I'm glad that's over with, Lou. As a Vietnam veteran, I am enjoying the new situation where everybody's reaching out saying, welcome home, which Vietnam veterans like to hear, welcome home, actually. And thank you for your service because...
A long time coming.
Yeah, long time coming. So I'm learning to appreciate it very much and happy about that. So that's no longer the problem. The citizens understand and have a lot of empathy for veterans and understanding the problem now is systemic, it's endemic, and it's cultural. We need to address the systems in our community, particularly the Department of Veterans Affairs, which I have to be fair and say they've improved, you know. But they've
improved because we put the spotlight on them.
Yeah.
Let's face it, had we not put the spotlight on them, we'd still be where we were.
Yeah, the Walter Reed situation brought that spotlight down. So even I've noticed that, you know, when you go out to the VA, they're making an attempt, but you know, it's a big bureaucracy. So like I say, the problem remains to be systemic, endemic, and cultural, and that's what we have to start addressing, you know, the central issues there.
Right, we've dealt with a lot of unique things, and you know, not too long ago, you know, we just dealing with the homeless situation with our veterans too. You know, on any given night, you could have 50,000 veterans on the streets. You know, and I have one of our guys' name is Dave, and I met him in Coney Island, and he was a Marine as well, and he served honorably and he got discharged the proper way. You know, honorable discharge. And here he was living on the street in Coney Island, you know, not a drug addict or anything, just
no home.
Yeah, there's no home. So what we did was walk in his steps. What we did was take on the fight with him and try to find out what was stopping us, what was stopping him from getting what he needed. So what they did was it was red tape at every step of the way. There was red tape. And things that, for a man like Dave, he gets very flustered very quickly when having to deal with red tape, especially when he doesn't have a team with him to do that. So there was a lot of places that if he drank, they didn't want him. There was a lot of, you know, I understand that we have things like the Patriot House and things to that effect. I would just like to see these things more readily available for the veterans with all types of needs. The ones that are addicted to the drugs, and to the ones that are alcoholics, and the ones that are not addicted to anything, and then watch a better job program for them. I mean, we have things like the vocational rehabilitation, you know, to try to get people jobs, but that's only disabled veterans. What about all the rest of the veterans?
Yeah, most of them come home ready, willing, and able to work.
And can't find nothing.
Can't find a job.
I had my big. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I had my biggest struggles when I first came home, and I found out there was no work, and you know, especially as a reconnaissance Marine. Yeah. So I found this little gig at Home Depot, and then before you knew it, I couldn't afford anything. Couldn't afford to keep up with my needs. I lost my car, lost everything. Had to wind up moving in with my family, and it led me into a very dark path. And it got me into a lot of trouble, and that's how I met people like Judge Brennan, who helped me, you know, get back on my feet. But it takes the veterans. It takes veterans like Pointman. It takes veterans, you know, like yourself. It takes veterans.
Well, I'm not a veteran, but I cannot tell you how much I emphasize what you're saying, because I represent so many of them.
Right.
You know, kids that come home, especially like Fallujah.
Right.
I had a kid that walked into an apartment house just like his, with his squad, And a 14-year-old kid, just like his kid brother, was watching Grand Theft Auto, just like his kid brother, and turned around with an AK-47 and killed this whole squad, and he had to put that kid down. Now, all of a sudden, he comes home, and within 4 months, he's arrested twice for DWI. All right? And pills. Now, he's being hopped up over there to stay awake for 3 days, and he never was a drinker or a pill taker before, and now they want to put him in jail. And I went to Judge Brennan, and I said, oh, wait a second here. You know, this is not the answer. Punishment's not the answer. Learning is the answer. Recognizing it before it happens.
And
that's
the
what-
access to services. And
Right,
that's
and,
what-
and having the avenue,
Well,
like you're saying.
Yes, and the courts don't know how to deal with veterans that are dealing with these issues.
Yeah, very few of the judges are veterans themselves. I mean, Judge Brennan was the first one, Vietnam veteran in the city.
I remember when I got sentenced. The judge saluted me. He said, "You're going to do 3.5 years, and 5 years post-release, and things to that effect." And what my things were, I had dealing with when you're dealing with PTSD and things like that, you don't even know you had it, never believed I had it. Is that
In denial.
complete denial, and you don't know how to deal with stress. So you think you can handle it. You think you can handle the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and all of a sudden, somebody confronts you, and you take everything as a threat, as your training, and then you handle it how you would handle it, how you're taught to handle it, and then you want to get in trouble, and the courts do not recognize that at all. So there's like no self-defense, basically, at all. And it's sad that a lot of veterans are incarcerated as well, And I met a lot of good men who made mistakes, who weren't dealing with their situations, and are doing.
And they will recognize it.
They will never see the light of day again.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to be home, but it's a very sad situation. And what changed my perspective, I wound up in a place called Attica Correctional Facility.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I went to a veterans yard. They did something for the veterans barbecue, and I walked out, and there was 250 veterans there. I'm like,
Makes you wonder,
these were all my brothers. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell happened
what
here?
did we do?
And that's only one facility out of 65.
And that's a
And
violent facility. Imagine the
Absolutely.
non-violent facilities.
And they were even more crowded than the other
Right.
veterans. And then I met guys from 10 Mountain Division, guys from the Marines, guys from every which path there is. And that was the day that changed me. That was the day that I realized if I had an opportunity, I was going to come home and I was going to try to make a difference for my brothers and my sisters, and they would never have to go through the same things that I went through.
Well, that's the day God talked to you.
Mm-hmm. That it was.
I had a friend, good businessman, wealthy, was in Vietnam, never got a scratch on him. Gets hooked on crack. So his wife calls me up finally, she's had it. So I go into the projects, by 45, I had a permit. I pull him out of the projects. I take him over to Fort Hamilton. I said, you're going in the program. So he's sitting there and he's going the woe is me complex. Woe is me, until I got to Vietnam, I didn't know anything, and then I started smoking pot, Now he's saying this next to a guy who's on his 4th CNI dog, and another guy who's been in that wheelchair since 1971. He says, if I had a gun, I'd kill myself. I said, you don't need a gun. You got me. All right? You go upstairs. I'll break your neck right here.
Mm-hmm.
The MP walked away. He said, I think it's time for me to take my break.
Mm-hmm.
And he did the 60 days, and he got straight. But I want to hear what was me.
There's a lot of individual stories. I have one myself, but that's damn near half a century ago. But the situation I like to focus on, which a lot of people overlook, is the system situation, and that's what the problem is. You could tell a man to go to attempt to get services, but how are those services rendered?
Right.
When I mentioned the culture of our society and the VA, which is a problem because in the system, we have the reviewers who review when a person files a claim. You know, they seem to be deficit focused as opposed to strength focused. In other words, they're
Bottom
looking for
line.
reasons why not to.
The bottom line.
Yeah, provide you with services. They're looking for fraud and things of that nature,
Yeah.
as opposed to being strength based, where they're looking as why you should receive services.
And how you can do it.
How to do it exactly.
Right.
But what you just said hit it right in the head. Every veteran's got to get over the woe is me.
That's it.
You understand that? And believe me, I tell people I hate veterans because they have the woe is me. You know, and I've had the woe is me. And I remember that they would put me on every type of medication there was because of the woe is me. They made everything very accessible, the veterans department. And you had to just stop, start over, man up, woman up, you know, and get rid of that. And address that red tape, you know what I mean? Understand it's a job in your own head, address it and push forward like that. So it's a problem on both sides. And that's, you know, it's also a problem that a lot of our young veterans that are coming home are not getting involved in things like
And they should be.
the Marine Corps
They should
leave.
be taught this before they even leave.
And they are very, very short.
But it's a 2-day.
Yeah, an 8-week program, 6-week.
Getting back to that, and I hear you guys, but you know, moral reprimands is not what I focus on when it comes to veterans when they're the victims of certain systemic situations. But you said they should be taught that right away. When they're discharged, one of the solutions for this is when a veteran is discharged from the military, automatically his records should be sent to the Department of Veterans Affairs. It takes too long. It takes months to get your
They should be ready for it.
records from the Pentagon. To,
Yeah,
you know,
they should be
and this
ready
is what holds up the system.
Right.
This is what frustrates a lot of people. There are people, woe is me, but everybody has a woe is me.
Yeah.
But the woe is me is frustration because you're coming back to a system.
Or making it worse.
Yeah, it
That's
doesn't
better.
seem to be designed to
Right.
give you services in an expeditious fashion. And we want to look at the root of the condition so we don't start, you know, blaming the victim. And if we can get to that, to the root of the systems, and get these services rendered in an expeditious fashion, you'd see more positive outcomes. Absolutely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Right.
Bobby.
And the average person has to do more themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I say that, you know, with all my heart.
Well, what happens is that once you hit so much dead ends, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
You wind up quitting. And that's when the depression hits.
Mm.
So things that you were so successful in the Marine Corps and in the Army, and you rose up in rank, got meritorious promoted, and then you're in an environment where
You're being
whatever
punished
you
for it.
do, you can't succeed.
Right.
So even a simple job like Home Depot, you know,
Yeah.
is like
You got to be a different person.
everything,
Yeah,
everything, and trying to get your records moved over from you, and you're absolutely right, and that's what causes the woe me. But what I'm saying is very important for the veteran, no matter what we're going through, and believe me, I went through it. You know what I mean? And the not quitting and to continue move forward. Because once you start doing the woes me, you go downhill really quick, and it's a very hard crash.
What
Very
happens
hard
is
crash.
you are unable to navigate the system effectively because you're so tight. I have Vietnam veteran brothers who are still so angry. See, I'm enjoying this new patriotism of thank you and welcome home. They're so angry, they don't accept it. And because they don't accept it, they're not accessing services, you see.
Mhm.
And that's what happened. I
Well,
understand
it's
that.
something they can still hang their hat on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And that's why every day I get mad at the 22 veterans that commit suicide.
Yeah.
There's 22 brothers and sisters that could be in the fight with us,
Right.
pushing forward together.
Mhm.
I see more and more stories of guys overseas and girls overseas meeting and marrying. You know, which is something you never heard of before. They're publicizing it now.
Right?
All right? Can't tell me it wasn't happening 5, 6, 7 years ago, so I know it was. But it's only this last year that you see TV commercials about it. Gee, who woke them up?
Right.
You know, there's a life in the service. You know, people don't realize that.
Yeah.
You know, and that I don't know. I get frustrated. You know, I mean, I guess the survivors go to the degree that, you know, everybody got drafted and got killed. But
Well, there's always two Americas in a lot of different issues. There's two Americas in the veterans issue. There's the Americans who fight the wars, and there's the Americans who pay the veterans to fight the wars so that our children and our grandchildren don't have to do the wars. We got to kind of coordinate that and get everybody on the same plateau, if you will, and realize that if we are sending people into harm's way, into combat and experiencing the horrific situation of combat, then we really have an obligation to respond to the needs upon their return. All our sayings and models, like the mission statement, which is beautiful. Abraham Lincoln's statement is beautiful for the Department of Veterans Affairs to take care of he who shall have borne the battle and his orphans and his widow. Well, let's do that. Here's another angle in the system. There are men and women probably who cannot access any services because they do not have an honorable discharge. However, they have borne the battle. I have brothers myself who have borne the battle with me but are unable to access services so their family can access services because, unfortunately, they didn't get an honorable discharge. There's something wrong with that as far as I'm concerned. Because
my best friend was a Green Beret in Vietnam, got the Silver Star, and almost I got dishonorably discharged 6 months later for telling the general to take the Silver Star, right? Because
Well, back then, from what I understand, Pointman's generation, they were looking to get rid of a lot of people out of the military because they built up the military so big at that time.
right.
So same thing happens after every war, and they were using dishonorable discharges to do so. So
Without seeing the far-reaching effect.
exactly, and I just have a young lady right now who managed to get hers from a dishonorable to an honorable. And that was the first person I ever heard of getting it changed.
Really?
And when I listen to everybody who has a dishonorable, and I listen to their stories and stuff, a lot of them, it falls into just look like the military was just trying to downgrade, downsize, and they were using that as a tool to get rid of a lot of people, and they wouldn't have to take care of a lot of people afterwards. So I would love to see an organization or something to that effect formed that would specifically help. And I don't know if there is, but and if there is, I would like to
reach out to
definitely.
those to upgrade because a lot of them don't know how to get those.
I don't know
They
how
don't know
to.
they can upgrade.
I'm the
I
common
think you
operator.
got to look into the legal community
Mhm.
and find some vets in the legal community and sit down with
But
them.
that's just, you have to remember, that's a totally different ballgame now. You're talking about lawyers, the lawyers that know civilian law.
No, I'm talking about some
Right.
Vets who
But even the veterans,
sat on court martials and
it's
things.
two different
Yeah.
laws,
Yeah. I know, I
and very
appreciate that, but-
difficult. Yeah, and you're a lawyer, so you
Yeah.
understand it. So because I've looked into lawyers for help with veterans things, and they have.
Yeah, I
know
people
about
come to me all the time because they see all the things I do.
Uniform Code of
And-
Military Justice.
Yeah, yeah.
I know about
Which is an oxymoron in itself.
I know about losing a libo. That's about it. You could have all the time in the military. You're not going to know the laws, completely, or how to change a dishonorable to an honorable.
Yeah.
So we have to really look into the people that know how to do this and try to form something up.
But you do have to be proactive. The veteran himself or herself has to be proactive because it can be accomplished, but it's so complex. You have to go after. You need, people, advocates to help. And I know myself accessing benefits. I didn't do it alone. I had a lot of assistance. Vets was one of the people that helped me a lot. And it's like anything else. Don't try to represent yourself. Get some help from these organizations. Until the Department of Veterans Affairs turns into advocates, which they are not just now. They're just that. They're Department of Veterans Affairs, not advocacy. And there are units and certain in those departments that are there to ensure that some benefits are not provided because it is about business also. It's cost effective. You have to realize also we have a lot of veterans. So I understand it's a lot of money. But as far as I'm concerned, they're the warriors of the country and they deserve it. You have to bite the bullet at that.
Mm-hmm. Well, somebody's got to compartmentalize the needs first
Mm-hmm.
and then address
Right.
what.
You have to recognize what the problem is first
Right.
and what the needs are first.
Right.
And it's a very unique situation, like I said before, that you have men and women serving together a lot more these days. So the same needs I don't believe are being addressed, at least from the ladies that I've talked to, and like I said, even from generation to generations, what his needs are right now is not the same needs that
Right.
of my people.
Well, we were talking before the show. Person wounded in Vietnam, it's like his survival was nil.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have people who have the most horrendous injuries in the world, and they're in Germany 4 hours later, getting the best medical treatment in the world. My wife's nephew was a medic in Afghanistan, and he and 21 other guys wrote a book about treating people, and you're saving their life, but are you saving their life? You know, a guy like your friend, you know, left with one limb.
Right, Brian.
Right.
And he died on the table twice, and they just have such a good team now of doctors and,
Right.
and
And
the
they got
ability
that.
to save people and to save him. And I remember he told me an interesting story that they donated their own blood right on the spot to accomplish that. You know, so you have amazing people doing amazing things these days, but now you're going to have amazing struggles for these veterans that had these amazing these awful injuries. So those things need to be met now as well. And that's what you were saying earlier. In Vietnam, they would just make a call on the field, whether to save them or not save them.
Right.
Today they're saving, they're trying to save everybody.
Right. Yeah, they call that the ratio to kill, and in the OEF, OIF campaigns, that's why we have so many veterans now with prosthetics. I mean, our medical advances are so deep and so intense that you can save anybody, no matter how horrific the wounds are. It's just what are they going to go through emotionally, and you have to do the right thing. There's a Hippocratic obligation to do no harm.
Well, that's what this book was about.
Lives,
Guys
So-
saying what was in their mind at the time.
Yeah, that creates a dilemma for the medical person right there.
Right,
That's a
and they're
dilemma.
living with it well
They're living
beyond
with it.
those years themselves, because they don't know how that person turned out most of the time.
Right.
I was proud of him. It's a good book.
What's the name of the book?
I forget the name of it now. It's 21 something like that. 21 stories by soldiers.
So here's another thing. If we have and Recon had a campaign, he had me doing 18 push-ups. I couldn't get to the 22 push-ups. I'm not the man I used to be 20 years ago. A day, to recognize these 22 suicides a day. But we want to figure out, what is the root of the condition that enables these 22 suicides a day, and if we can recognize it. And oftentimes we don't recognize it. We don't recognize the signs and symptoms. And it's not all just individual pathologies, but it's other things. Do we recognize it? Does our system, does our medical professions recognize? When a wife complains to someone about her husband sitting in an empty bathtub, do they take action or they just overlook it? So we have to look at our how we're looking at these things and how we're addressing them so we can catch them. It's the same thing that things are happening in our society that we realize it, because we're a post-reactive society. We don't take action until it happens. And things are happening in our society, as you know, the current tragedy, and we're finding out that there were things that could have been done to ward those. So we got to take a look at the central issue and problems, but more so how we can provide preventive actions, as opposed to interventions after it happens. Even when veterans come home with substance use disorders, we're in substance use, which is one of my fields. We're trying to focus a little more on prevention. Why wait till the person is an adult and totally addicted? Why not, try to catch it before it happens? So these are things that hopefully, and we are starting to
I
look at.
profile the guy who's coming home before he gets there as a possible.
Exactly, as a possible. But one of the things is starting the ball right away. I'm not sure how this